I'm gonna start kind of unexpectedly. Nothing about this event is really planned or is going as it's supposed to go. We were going to have a very special author who is not with us anymore. She passed away at 25 last summer, but her mother was going to read her work. Well, something tragic happened. Her mother couldn't make it. And then we were going to have an actress to read her work. And again, something tragic happened. She's not going to be reading it. But I was really eager to share with you the work of Janina Glasov, who was a 25-year-old journalist. And she was 20 at the time when she wrote it. So I'm just going to read it for you. When I was little, none of the boys wanted to play with me. It's not that they don't like you, my mother would say. They are just intimidated. It took years for me to realize that she had been right. Call me a bitch. It doesn't bother me. If that is the price of being strong and opinionated, I'll pay it. A part of me always felt this way. I could never stop myself from speaking up. I never took shit from anyone. There was a time, though, when I did wish that I was quieter or sweeter or just different in ways I couldn't even name. I do not know exactly how I overcame these feelings. Maybe I was just lucky. Some women aren't. In fear of the consequences, they try to hide who they are or change themselves. Not just the bitches. All sorts of expectations and restrictions exist concerning the female sex. Women spend their lives negotiating the tightrope of proper femininity. They walk this line with extreme care because the consequences can be grave for the woman who falls into the realm of deviance and deviance. Women in America today enjoy greater freedom than ever before, but they are by no means free from the influence of notions like good and bad. Proper femininity. Stereotypes are like demigods in their own right, nearly impossible to kill. When one encounters a woman who contradicts or complicates the label assigned to her, it is often the individual who gets rejected, rather than the stereotype itself. She is effectively silenced and the stereotype protected. With the portraits of real women included in Bad Girls and Their Stories of Glory, I hope to take one small step in counteracting the process. Muted as they may be, women are rebelling. Underneath the static of silence, one can just barely hear the battle cries. The pages that follow are an attempt to record those glorious noises. What follows is a very short excerpt from Janina's chapter on a dominatrix, Miss Moore. I love seeing how their different religions and cultures play into their psyches here. Like Raj, for example. He just wants to worship my body, said Mistress Moore. I figure it's no wonder. His Hindu religion has goddess worship and all these beautiful female deities. I have another client who is a born-again Christian. It kills him that this is his sexuality, but he also connects this to his Christianity. He even has a crucifixion fantasy. Are crucifixion fantasy common? I asks, said Janina. Not really. We do have one client, Ninja, who's definitely a crucifixion freak. His sessions are very intense. I'm totally naked, crown of thorns, and I carry a cross on my shoulders for 3 hours, which is itself is brutal. Ninja's whipping me the whole time. I'm usually in tears, but I enjoy it. Or rather, I find it fulfilling because he's enjoying it and I care about him. Our sessions are also fulfilling because part of Ninja's process with me is about finding redemption for all the people who have hurt him. More explains, turning back to me, he's got an incredibly bad stutter. A lot of women have treated him very poorly, and he just has no self-confidence. That's his cross that he bears. But he manages to let a lot of that go with our sessions. I walk in as a goddess, very dominant female, and then actively submit to all this pain and torture. My suffering is a sacrifice for the sins of all the others who have come before me. Then, at the end of the session, he wants me to hold him and comfort him for what he's just done. Now, I am the Mother Goddess, womanly understanding and forgiveness and nurturing. Really, he sees me as goddess the entire time. A lot of people do come here with abuse issues, she admits. Those are not BDSM issues, they're human issues. But our psyches inform our sexuality. If our psyche is damaged, it will show up in our sexuality. The thing is, I think that if you have a need for abuse, you just have it. You can't change that in somebody because it's in their past, but this place can turn their need for abuse into a positive experience. Most people are very afraid, Mistress Moore tells me. There are horrible stigmas, but, think you're sick and demented, that you have a mental illness or were abused as a child. Just the fact that these are called fetishes, they're categorized as something separate. They come from fear. And their purpose is to make people in this lifestyle ashamed of who they are. Sometimes, the shame and fear become internalized because of a lack of understanding. People make their assumptions all the time. They come from the fact that our country was founded by white Christian men with a specific value set that's been really ingrained. They come from what's happening politically. They come from the church. And oftentimes I ask them, what do you need to be punished for? Have you been bad? And it's very hard for them to answer that. They feel this need for abuse, but they have no context for it. There are real reasons to be afraid, Mistress Moore continues. I look at the clock and realize that Raj should be arriving any minute, so I excuse myself. Driving away from the dungeon, I see a car approaching. We slow down as our cars near each other on the narrow, winding dirt road. The driver is a well-dressed Indian man in his 40s. On this road, at this time of day, he can only be one person. He waves at me as our cars pass, and I wave back, from one creature of the night to another. So this was the excerpt from Janina Glassov's work. Janina is not with us anymore. For those who just arrived, she passed away last summer at the age of 25, leaving a lot of promising work behind her. So please join with me. Thank you.
So yes, I do run Horror Magazine, and we were in the same alley 4 years ago reading for that, but tonight is a different piece. So dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life. Prince, that magical funky being, presides here from the afterworld and from the wall. Right before his death, he performed in Oakland and San Francisco. He certainly understood the grooviness of these two cities, these roiling, boiling cities. San Francisco, erected like some wild origami town spilled out from the gold rush, quickly becoming a mecca for the striving. gamblers and prostitutes, teachers and seekers, and those with an eye on a brave new edge. Poets raged, steams gushed, sands were shifted, revolutions were forged, and some pretty ladies still rest wide-eyed on a hill. Every year upon year they come, and continue to come, searching for promise and possibility. And every year there are those who leave. It is a tumultuous population of grand ebb and flow in rhythm with the ocean beach tides, fostering innovation, diversity, and many a movement. Alas, this quality also makes the idea of the city as home very tenuous. An awful trembling over the fault lines that is audible on those early mornings when the cleaners of Mission bars hose off the sidewalks. That cracking is always palpably imminent. But through it all runs a mighty underground river, releasing the sulfur smell of survival through city street grates. The raucous voices of radical ghosts echo still in these alleys. And those voices bullied to be shushed just keep shouting louder and longer. And then, like a bird or perhaps a sailboat, there is a vaulting bridge. It brought me across. Contrary to the current climate of forced exodus, I chose to move to Oakland. As that train comes barreling out of the tunnel and upwards onto the tracks, I sigh now, a coming home sigh. The clothes on clotheslines wave, Black Lives Matter murals on the backsides of houses shout out, and the friendly green of the Tribune building winks in the distance. I love Oakland's call of live your life out loud. You can have an impromptu picnic at the Oakland Museum, and the security guard won't tell you to put your wine away. Instead, he'll probably bum a cigarette and sit around and talk for a while. You can speak at City Hall. Anyone can. Sing at the Goodwill. And it is the done thing to say hello to folks on the street. To know thy neighbor. And fight on their side for this good future, too. And I do. San Francisco and Oakland. There is much that thrives in them and between them. And fury also pulses. Honey, I know. I know times are a-changin'. It's time we all reach out. And a beat. I performed part of that piece, preacher style, for an art show in May of 2016. We were battling then those issues familiar to all of us who have lived in either city. We were battling gentrification, homelessness, care, income inequality, cultural and racial discrimination, those damn Google buses. But yet, we were hopeful. We thought we were moving forward. Since that time, just last year, we have all been plunged into catastrophe of every imaginable kind. A torture political and of the very earth itself. A catastrophe we are breathing as the smoke of it has filled our lungs all of this week and still rages. And since that May, we share more than ever before because we have become sanctuary cities. A designation that is both official with specific purpose, an important purpose, and metaphor. Says the posters in the shop fronts and on lampposts and emblazoned from the windows of homes, Oakland stands united against hate. Alameda stands united against hate. Berkeley stands united against hate. San Francisco stands united against hate. These signs shout, we will be your refuge. Tell your story. Fight for your truth. Break the old patterns and the heavy ways. We will support you. Call out, and we will care for you. be it for the people of Puerto Rico, or Syria, or the Dakotas, or Fruitvale, or Sonoma. We will be with you. We are with you. And it is so often the artists that are the first to help. Helping with their bodies, and aid, and donations, and volunteering, and hosting benefits. But sometimes simply and powerfully by giving voice to the ache that we all feel. Art and the act of it will not heal all wounds, nor will it solve all problems. It can even seem frivolous in the midst of devastating hardship. But it is the key, not only to our survival, but to our overcoming, our veritable rising up. Rising up, come hell or high water, needs these voices. It needs your voice, speaking out with us. We must refuse to be silent. We must roar and roar and roar and roar some more. And then perhaps we can become millions upon millions of calls rising a crescendo that drowns out the flaming winds of destruction, and more and more and more, until at last we all get to bathe in that rain. That purple, oh yes, that purple, purple rain.
Please welcome Rimon Rogghe.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be here and for everyone who's here. Just take a deep breath. There's a lot happening. There always has been a lot happening, so. When I wake up in the morning, it seems that a lot of things are backwards, and oftentimes fantasize about a world that could be and what would that look like. So I wrote a little bit about trying to imagine that world. In another reality, people were able to fight back even more. The trans kid who was bullied and then murdered ended up tackling her assailant, and she went on to grow up and have a life of her own. Youth and adults who were targeted banded together to fight back. Queer youth who took their own lives formed a ghost army to support the battle being fought above ground. The sheer will of the people reached a zenith, and magical things began to happen. Instead of talking about what was wrong, people created the world they wanted to live in, and the systems that were in place began to fall apart. A spark occurred, and instantly, all of the American flags disappeared. A quick poof, and they were all gone. Military bases around the world no longer had an identity, and those stationed there had a momentary loss of identity. With no symbolism to back up an empty ideology, people had to really think about what or whom they were fighting for. They could stick around to help, or they could leave. Envelopes featuring flag stamps got lost in the mail. A few love letters never made it to their destination. College kids wearing American flag swim trunks and boxers were embarrassed as their garments disappeared. This was not painful at all, but bewildering a little bit. If you're looking through a telescope at the moon, you could see a really tiny poof and the flag was gone. And with the decrease in American flags, the sales of lighters also decreased. And the folks at the stock exchange went wild and rushed to sell their shares of Zippo and Bic stocks. Kids in classrooms, no longer having an object to praise or worship, had their attention focused on how they were feeling. They noticed their hands on their hearts and could feel it pounding, and they realized they were alive and had a choice. As this was happening, borders began to dissolve. Well, how can an imaginary thing disappear, you ask? Well, for those who believed in these lines and walls, they could no longer see them. Globes became less cluttered, and maps blended into one another. As this was occurring, the ghosts came about, planting fruit trees on every sidewalk and removing the concrete, having it crumble in their hands. Empty lots became community gardens to grow herbs and vegetables for all who came by. Free stores popped up. Everyone exchanged goods. Companies operating at a loss just shut down, and they would no longer build things that would just fall apart within a matter of years. Workers seized the means of production, and they inherited everything. In the future, all the cell phones and the computers had solar panels for cases. All the banks turned into food banks. People who were incarcerated because they were poor, or had too many tickets, or couldn't afford bail, or because they were brought up on drug charges, or folks who were sex workers or accused of being sex workers were all released, and their cells were filled by those of war criminals. Dick Cheney, Karl Rove, among the masses, were sent there while people looked to find a way to abolish prisons entirely. In the Middle East, the Israeli military decided to fight neo-Nazis instead of Palestinians. And people being able, the police worldwide were defunded and found themselves questioning their purpose in life. And now when there was an emergency, people called mental health professionals and healers. Instead of people walking around carrying batons and guns, they carried around bottles of water, tissues, blankets, art supplies, and snacks. Police stations were turned into community centers, offering shelter for all. Libraries began to stay open for 24 hours. Bars began to close down. People stopped drinking so much. At all hours of the day, there were venues for folks to tell stories and share, and support groups popped up everywhere. And art imitated life too. Gone were the days of the buddy cop movies and entertainment that showed militarization in a fun or redeeming light. Instead of buddy cop movies, we'd see movies about talk therapists working with Reiki practitioners and folks who are healers working together to help heal people instead of punish them. People being able to talk through their problems made for a different world. Because we're currently living in a reality of the decisions made by those who came before us. And maybe in an alternate universe, people were held accountable for their actions, because the best form of an apology is changed behavior. So maybe in a different world, 45, being disgusted by his father's discriminatory housing policies, decided to do the opposite and provided housing for anyone regardless of their ability to pay. And maybe in another world, Mike Pence actually came out of the closet, and realizing the obstacles queer folks still face, he worked to ensure people had legal protections. And seeing that adults need a safe place to have consensual sex, he went on to open up bathhouses and sex clubs around the world. Paul Ryan, noticing how much physical fitness has helped his self-esteem as a mediocre white man, makes it his mission to ensure all folks have access to comprehensive health coverage, mental and physical, and opens up fitness centers that are free for all to attend. None of them decide to go into political office because they realize at this point leadership roles deserve to be filled by women. And after enough time, humanity got to the point where we didn't even need any leaders, and everyone could just support each other as they were. Thank you.
So this is part of a short story about the Milo Yiannopoulos events last February in Berkeley. Berkeley burns. The rats are everywhere, the exterminator says, rolling up the blue sleeves on his overall. He walks in and starts looking in the corners, tapping here and there against the wall. But where are the rats? If they're everywhere, then why can't I see them? Are they all hiding? I don't understand. I haven't seen a single rat in Berkeley since the election, I say. The exterminator pays no attention. So, did you find any rats? No, sir, but just in case. He hands me a stack of large-looking traps and a pack of peanut butter with a picture of a rat on it. In big yellow letters it reads, "Magic bait." 1 rat in 10 says it tastes delicious after the first bite, but the other 9 didn't live to tell the tale. I shivered. I thanked the man for his traps, shut the door, and shoved them far into the back of the closet. A knock on my door. It's my friend Bonnie. She said a big hairy man with a blue overall let her in. Bonnie's 19. I used to be her French teacher. She decided we should be friends, much to my reluctance. She would hang around my office hours, telling me all about her brothers and her sisters and her annoying roommate who leaves the lights on in the bathroom all the time and sprinkles everything with sage. You're not supposed to sprinkle it. You're supposed to burn it. Duh. She screws up her eyes behind her glasses and adjusts her army green jacket. So, are you ready? I'm ready, although I don't know what on earth I'm doing. I'm nearly done with my dissertation. I'm on my fellowship here. I should be smoking at a bistro in Paris, talking about Baudelaire and the general meaninglessness of life. Instead, I'm being dragged to a protest by a dorky teenager against some neo-Nazi douchebag who's giving a speech on campus. They say it's free speech, she says, but it's not. It's hate speech. Sounds pretty bad, I say, still in disbelief that there could be so many neo-Nazis crawling around our Berkeley campus. Where are these guys coming from? Have you seen them? My question is answered pretty quickly when we arrive on campus. It's lunchtime, and Sproul Plaza is filling up with students. The members of the KCCC, the Korean Campus Crusade for Christ, are strumming their guitars for our salvation. Next to the half-empty table of the BLB, the Berkeley Backgammon League, the girls from Alpha Delta Pi are selling donuts for humanity. In front of it all, like an island in the stream, stands the American flag tent of the Berkeley College Republicans, BCR. A Make America Great banner waving in the wind. A tall, blonde, Aryan specimen in a great suit and a blood-red MAGA hat, like a businessman at a convention. I look up their website. Berkeley College Republicans, the best party on campus. It sports a picture of a group of boys and girls, hands on their hearts, in what I presume is a pledge of allegiance to America, and not to the box of pepperoni pizza in front of them. Wow. The whole thing has an eerie touch of Hitler-Jugend. Look, there's even an article. Life in the Political Closet. Bonnie shakes her head. Look, they're turning it all around, she says. They're using queer rhetoric to make them seem like victims against an intolerant liberal majority. They fuck your brain, dude. We're not having a debate. It's time for action. At 6 o'clock we arrive at Sproul Plaza. The protest is underway. People are chanting to the beat of the drum. A large white dove spreads its wings against the pinkish sunset as the silver letters "No" stab through the falling darkness. 2 armed policemen stand atop the balcony. I'm startled by a bang. 2 teenage boys with handkerchiefs over their noses light some kind of fireworks. Bonnie shakes her head. They shouldn't do that. 2 weeks ago, someone got shot at a talk like this. I shiver and try to scan the crowd for pieces of flashing metal. Perhaps I should go home. Maybe it's not my place. Bonnie grabs my arm. Shut it down, she chants with everybody else. Before I know what's happening, a group of masked kids are running at the fence line and tearing it apart. They hurl fireworks at the windows. Something explodes. I hope nobody shoots us, I say to Bonnie. She crosses her fingers. She looks scared too. Her big round eyes are no longer so puppyish. What used to be the brownish hazel of confusion has now turned into fear. Not fear about what to do with her life, fear for her life. And suddenly, I get angry. I get angry at this goddamn UC Berkeley administration who dared to let a fascist speak on campus, who out of cowardice and ignorance thought nothing of endangering the lives of idealistic students who believe in a better future. Shut it down! Shut it down! I find myself shouting at the top of my lungs. Shut it down! This has to end. The joke is over. It screams in my gut. All the absurdity of twisted rhetoric and rotten ideas, here in America, in Europe, all over the world, comes flooding over me as the masked figures stare down the glacial floodlights. Smoke is wafting through the building. Smoke comes wafting through the tree. Smoke spreads out like curls of frankincense all over Sproul Plaza. Thick, wafting smoke, like the vapors of a dream. In the thickness of the smoke, I see Martin Luther King's nightmare. Hordes of young Republicans marching on the White House, in crimson baseball caps, brandishing swastikas. They chant their songs of white supremacy, hands on their hearts, invincible, each one an exact replica of the other. Death to diversity, down with freedom, no more truth, no more rights, stop killing innocent lies. And the whole thing goes up in a giant mushroom cloud as they chant their way into oblivion. Then, silence. The event has been cancelled. The policeman on the balcony murmurs through a bad megaphone. Please disperse. Helicopters hover back and forth across the disk of the full moon. Bonnie looks frozen. She still hasn't let go of my arm. Jeez, I so need a drink. In my apartment, we sip bourbon as we watch the footage of the burning floodlight live on CNN. They make it look way worse than it was. A mob of violent protesters. Bullshit. Pictures crop up all over Facebook that make it look like Berkeley's going up in flames. Outside, the sound of sirens and helicopters is still going. Next to the couch, my eye falls on one of Bonnie's shoes. I pick it up and throw it at the wall. It sends a thud throughout the room. What did you do that for? Apparently the rats are everywhere. Shoo, shoo.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Simon. I grew up in Berkeley, so yeah. So I'll be reading a few short pieces. The first two are from a sequence of poems I'm writing on the enemies of Rome. The first is Conqueror's one concerning Hannibal Barca. Keeper of mountains and of storms, I, Barca, lay now before you, enmity without end, the ruin of Rome. Let the loved beast climb down from the snow, and Surus pass ambulant amongst lilies. Grant the Balearic slingers bringing blood rain beneath hail and howl of the Numidian horse. Let Siracos bring the Libyan shore into the eyes of the Italic legions. Transfixed youth, I once had eyes so wide when I shivered with his arms encircling. I had been the wind, was breath on the murex. This is Conquerors 2 concerning Mithridates VI, king of Pontus. Ego Mithridates Ponti Rex, staring into nothing real, out over the Bosphorus, with the long-armed tendrils of the Cilician fleet clipped and bound up within the seawalls of Tarsus. Fuck Pompey, would have starved the wolf, would have sown Pergamum's fields with dragon's teeth, and surged the plain with blood of legions. This is my harvest. Hypericum perforatum, storax mixed with frankincense, gentian root and Illyrian iris, poppy tears poured over dried rose leaves, belladonna, atropeia, aconitum, lyconoctinum, and henbane, my own tarachony, and my final gift, the wide pastures. I never went to that city, to mar purple with iron straggling the barbarian victory car. Could never give that to Remus and his fucking brother. Hey, thanks. So I'm a MFA candidate at St. Mary's College in the poetry genre. I'm also one of the assistant poetry editors for our campus magazine, campus literary journal. So if anyone's interested in submitting, we're looking for poetry, fiction, and nonfiction, and there's a small honorarium, so I have a couple of flyers, so feel free to stop by and say hi, and thank you again for being here. So this next piece is from another sequence I'm writing concerning the myths of Artemis. So this is Agrea 1, Ride or Die. Whose woods? Queer light between pine bark and oak leaf, air subsumed in hound's call, the claw-scratched root, pursuing, he can't see the resting greaves, can't read the mark of superior boots. He parts the briar ring and silver burns the pool, the hunter bathing among dryads. She puts one in the air, the fuckboy turns. Like frogs repulsed and driven beneath lily pads, the alien game dives into the thorn. Blood mad, his loyal beast rip fur from flesh. From altered sinew the strange hooves are torn. The wood nymphs twist up herb for one more sesh. Whose organs tossed among trails Actaeon that you once stalked? Where have your antlers gone? So my final piece isn't from a series, but it's one of these poems that kind of come to you when you're like on the bus or like on the bar, and then you're just like, oh, okay. So this is 13 Ways of Seducing a Straight Boy on the Art of Subterfuge Admixture of Poisons. He thinks of you thinking of him, middle term in absentia. Think of something else inside the canvas when he shivers and you have confined all of the warmth within your sleeping bag. Do not touch when your trash friend, electing the floor, for some reason insists on you two having the bed. Your body conceals dithyrambs. When it recoils, heed the pythoness and follow the daimon. Had there ever been such corrosive proximity? Valleys mid-Sleaford perhaps, or Sassoon in the trenches? Remember Heracles after madness, astonished at the kinslaughter, and Theseus arriving to exorcise despair from those arms? And Cicero's Pylades holding to Orestes the mirror, urging remember, friend, remember? Pausanias at the banquet subtweeting hashtag Harmodius and Aristogaton at an unbothered Phaedrus? Perseus undoes the drawstring, combing over the scales, and the pouch falls away, revealing the Gorgon's face. Though all must be endured, O Sappho, on our brazen emerging mannerism. Leaning in so close, probing what they become in the dark. The Magdalene's palm curving the thigh of the deposited Christ. When they leave, I feel them, and do not return the window strains. Thank you.
I want to apologize for my English. It's my first public speech in English. It's translation of one of my articles about my friend who was killed 1 year ago. He was a Russian journalist who supported Ukraine. He exposed Russian propaganda in Ukraine and Russian agents of influence, and he was found dead in the late August 1 year ago with a shotgun wound in his head. He never had a gun, so I don't believe that it was suicided. This is translation of article about him. Sasha performed one heroic act in his life, and it defined him. It defined him even though he was already a middle-aged, established man. The impact of this deed, if it's really done, is undeniable until the end. It's left an imprint that cannot be faked, which cannot be understood and felt by everyone who hasn't lived through it. He sacrificed everything he had because he couldn't go against his conscience. As banal as it seems, it has become the most important aspect of his character. He, rather cynical and not at all naive person, who knew firsthand the world's cruelty and who learned to live with it, suddenly allowed himself to do the right things, and as a result to fall in love, from the heart, uncompromisingly, unselfishly. He fell in love, which was considered an abstraction, not even a living person, the formally adjusted territory delineed by the state boundaries, but he loved her more faithfully and devotedly than a living person. Sasha, like a schoolboy, fell in love with Ukraine. He sacrificed everything for this love, and he lost a lot. He was not a romantic youth who did not know life. He was an established adult who founded a light, successful business, who participated in many deals, not all of them reputable, who had connections with the Kremlin. He was not an angel, far from an angel. He could not be accused of naivety or stupidity. Cunning, adventurous, brave, he seems to have everything in life. At one point, simply could not go against his heart and conscience. He confronted the system, his former colleagues, his former country, because he could not do otherwise. He lost most of his business, the opportunity to return home and see his children, lost his home and homeland. And in return, he found what was the most important for him, the amazing inner freedom and the carefree audacity. There are some actions which cleanse the soul in contradictory way. It's a bit like a soldier returning from the front. He seems become closer, he has seen much, his heart is heavy, and at the same time he sometimes behaves like a child, rambunctious, wild. He seems to have lost all the ability to adjust to life. He sometimes becomes naive and vulnerable to the limit. And the reason for this, I think not only in stressful events that he lives through. During the war, actions and sacrifices are measured on different scale, which on the one hand wounds the soul, and on the other purifies it. Any heroic actions always is a psychological trauma. It's always sacrificed pain. But at the same time, this action reveals a different measures of life, renews and cleanses the every essence of it. And it all blends together, a new level of morality, a sense of amazing freedom, a phenomenal strength gives a sense of righteousness, the deepest trauma, the weight of experience that tears the soul to bloody splinters. This bizarre mixture is the price to pay for such actions. That's why Sasha could be a dry professional, a mocking cynic, at the same time run around like a boy in front of sinister Lubyanka building and be photographed against the backdrop of the Czechist nest with the Ukrainian teddy bear Stepa. He did not care what people thought about him and how it might look. He who had lost almost everything in life did not think about status or respectability. Today, this teddy bear Stepa has become a symbol of struggle and firelessness, of how the small weak creator can become very strong if it's belief in what it does. And also, he showed something very important, that you don't have to participate in your country brutality and crimes, that you can live differently, that you can choose a different path not because of naivety and ignorance the law of life. He showed that you can be smart, successful, established, understand everything, have a lot, and nevertheless, quite consciously, act differently than others. He was not the only who made such a choice, but he was yet another example that it's possible, and a second chance exists for everyone. The story of Sasha Shitinin does not mean that everyone who commits such an act will necessarily perish. In war, it's impossible to predict the outcome, and much less worthy people died of the hands of Russian murderers only because they knew too much or became inconvenient witnesses or accessories to crime. At the same time, there are examples of brave worthy people who did survive. This is something everyone can emulate in order to continue the work that he dedicated his life to. How this story will end in death or in victory no longer depends on him, but rather of all of us. I want to believe that it will have a different ending around the next turn. Thank you.
Making it, and I'm gonna read one piece as well. The war is in my brain. It's in your brain. It used to be outside, for the land, in the land, not anymore. At some point, it shifted. It sneaked under my skin, under your skin. It pierced the membranes of your cells. Yellow, thin, the engineered words targeted the brain cells. For every brain cell, this battle rages. In the non-existent virtual space akin to the ancient Greek epic, intangible, infinite, is foaming and furing like Scylla and Charybdis. Digital green soldiers blink and shimmer, the ethereal combatants of the surgical militant psych ward, operating with syringes filled with minions and myths aimed at my mind, at your mind. My right for thought is claimed by the enemy. My heartbeat is stolen, recorded, analyzed, processed, melted into messages targeting my 8 gender income groups of consumers. Dreams are hacked and leaked on the fake news. My memories are encrypted and leaked too. There is a shameless database of desires. The midnight wails I see under my eyelids turn into compromise. The black oil of greed greases and glistens in the sheen of the luxury Novarish mansions in Miami, in the TV ads in Las Vegas, the screens in the chubby hands of the toddlers, the flats of the skyscrapers, flash the distorted faces of dictators. The deep water shellfish and silent sharks are not safer in their caves than you on your cell phone. Listen, this is what I saw in my collective geopolitical dream last night. We all are an enormous sea monster. It moves. Its octopus tentacles. Its hydra-like heads rotate like 10 cabins. It breathes black ink, spitting out toxic fumes that immediately shape into slogans, paralyzing our very ability to think, to be. The monster retreats into the belly of the ocean. When in danger, it changes colors, hues, ideologies, like a chameleon in camouflage. It calculates everything. Today, it is a rock. Tomorrow, it is a weed or a jellyfish. Next, it is a neo-Nazi or a communist. But it doesn't really matter because the monster doesn't have beliefs, principles, no ideas. All it has is the insatiable lust for power. Indecent, like childborn, unbearable, like necrophilia, incest, cannibalism, all at once. It wants to become us. It wants to devour us. Horny, hungry, raging, yet robed in the priest gowns, the pope of the murderers, with brown blood caked over the bubblegum pink and metal cross. The left frog of a fake god pinned to it, squinting at us with a smirk, cack, a hammer and sickle in one tentacle, a swastika in the other. National flags of all countries and its horror tiara. The cheap aluminum of its artificial eye glitters menacingly at us, and there is nothing in the place where the heart should be, where a human would expect to hear another breathing being to have a heart. Because how can one exist without one? I hear it in my head. It has millions of steel teeth, tank teeth, and bullets that are screeching in the empty, tortured chamber of my head. Because of course, it is all only in my head. Where else could it be? The Uber monster, the phantom, the beast, Babylonian beast of 2017, by whole existence. by its very invention. Billions and millions of trolls howling in its honor. And I don't know anymore. Where did the blue sky go? Where did the sun go? How do I find the animal innocence of the children? How do I stop it? Who is to help us when all gods are rotting in hell? Hey you! Non-existent! Hey you on Olympus! Can you hear me? From the depths.
Thank you so much for being here. Thanks, Zizi. Always a pleasure. There are regulars here with us in LitCrawl. So be a regular too and see if you can give us a little love in the bucket or a little love in the cookie jar for Puerto Rico and the North Bay. LitQuake wouldn't be possible without donations, without your attendance. So we're going to pass this around and we appreciate anything you can give.